Hi, buju tanseanin, wapanuni kwe indigenous, wapashke mangan dutem, Pine Creek duck bay Volgarn and Dunji, Winnipeg Utanang. Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here today in Reykjavik among so many leaders, ministers, elders, community, representatives who share a deep commitment to the Arctic. It's our people, our land, and together it is our future. I want to begin by thanking our host for a warm welcome today and for their hospitality. As Canada's Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs and Minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, it's my privilege to join you at a time when the world's eyes are once again turning north. For Canada, the Arctic is not just our horizon, it is our home. Together, we are here to build strong communities, protect people and the planet, and power a future that is defined by peace, innovation, and partnership. So I come to this work not only as a minister, but as someone who has lived the Northern story. I am Anishinaabe, I am Innu, and I am Métis. I am from Manitoba. I'm raised in Winnipeg, in the heart of Canada, where I learned that community means everything. I'm also proud to serve as the first First Nations woman ever elected federally in Manitoba, representing a riding that covers nearly 75% of the province's land mass. It also covers 73 communities, 42 First Nations communities, 20 of which are remote, isolated communities. And as Canada's first Indigenous woman to serve as Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs, I'm leading a portfolio that touches almost 40% of the country's geography. I carry the voices of our people and the hopes of the next generation with me here today. But my presence here is not about being the first. It's about making sure that I'm not the last. Nearly 40% of our land mass is considered Arctic and Northern, spanning 3 territories, the northern parts of several provinces, and Inuit Nunangat, the Inuit homeland. This region covers more than 2.7 million kilometers, with a coastline stretching 162,000 kilometers, the longest in the world. It is home to more than 150,000 people, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And these traditional homelands are also represented by the knowledge that Indigenous peoples carry in the North and the Arctic today. So our approach as a country, whether it's around environmental, social, or economic, it is firmly rooted in partnership with Indigenous people because we make up more than half of the region's population. And this is especially true of Inuit, who called the Arctic home since time immemorial. So our policies are anchored in the recognition of Indigenous rights and the pursuit of reconciliation, as well as the belief that prosperity, security are strongest when we share in these responsibilities together. So in terms of protecting sovereignty through partnership, in 2019, we launched Canada's Arctic and Northern Policy Framework, a long-term vision that was co-developed with Indigenous, territorial, and provincial governments. It aligns our national and international policies with the priorities of those who live in the region, not just those who govern it. In 2022, Inuit leaders and the Government of Canada endorsed the Inuit Nunangat policy, which supports Inuit self-determination and aims to improve health, education, and economic opportunity. And this will help close the gap that exists between Inuit communities and the southern parts of Canada. In 2024, we put this policy into action through a government direct-wide initiative which developed partnerships with Inuit leadership, ensuring that every federal department now applies this policy consistently and meaningfully. We're accelerating climate change initiatives that evolve security and political dynamics in the Arctic. Particularly, we're looking at the erosion of the international Arctic order following Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. This prompted us to recalibrate our diplomatic approach to advancing Canada's interest in the region. In late 2024, we launched Canada's new Arctic foreign policy. It's reaffirming our commitment to the rules-based international order and to strategic values-driven cooperation amongst Arctic states. In this shared region, Canada champions Arctic state primacy and seeks multilateralism on our terms. Also, in 2024, Canada released a new defense policy, our North, Strong and Free. This policy identified the Arctic as a region of strategic importance for Canada's security and defense. Canada is making historic investments to ensure that the Canadian Armed Forces has the capabilities required to operate in an evolving geopolitical context. Our approach to the Arctic is based on extensive consultation with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and Northern governments. The policy commits Canada to advancing reconciliation with Indigenous people, not only within our borders, but through how we engage globally. Central to that vision is the creation of the Arctic Ambassador, strengthening Canada's international engagement and advancing our strategic objectives across the circumpolar world. So this summer, Virginia Mearns, an Inuk leader from Iqaluit, was appointed as Canada's Arctic Ambassador, the second woman to ever serve that position who is Inuit. Virginia brings deep experience in governance and Arctic diplomacy. We are honored to have her present at the Arctic Circle Assembly this week, where she will play a key role on advancing Canada's priorities in close collaboration with Northerners and international partners. I'd like to give welcome to Virginia Means in this new role, because I know Virginia is here. So congratulations to you, Ambassador Means. Canada's approach to Arctic security is holistic, comprehensive, and it's not just about defending our national borders. When we think about true security in the North, it also includes human security. So when we think about that, we think about food security, adequate housing, affordable energy, and reliable communications. We're also thinking about infrastructure and dual-use infrastructure. We measure this by how well families are doing, how resilient communities are, and we also look at the ability of Northerners to shape their own future. So human security begins in the home, with warm food, shelter, and a sense of belonging. These are not abstract policy goals. They are the daily realities that determine whether a community thrives or whether it struggles. So in response to the evolving geopolitical dynamics, including strategic competition, foreign interference, or militarization, Canada's strengthening its presence in the North, asserting sovereignty, and reinforcing regional defense and security architecture. Through pragmatic diplomacy and close collaboration with Arctic allies, Canada is committed to maintaining a stable, prosperous, and a secure Arctic. That is why Canada is investing in all of these areas, because strengthening the North strengthens the entire nation. A key milestone in that journey came in the Nunavut Lands and Resource Devolution Agreement, which was signed in 2024, the single largest land transfer in Canadian history. It represents a powerful act of trust and partnership, transferring authority over public lands, natural resources, and fresh water from the federal government to the government of Nunavut. It marks a holistic step in ensuring the Arctic governance is led by those who live there, not directed from afar. And through Polar Knowledge Canada and Canadian High Arctic Research Station in Cambridge Bay, we are advancing Northern-led science and innovation from climate adaptation to renewable energy, ensuring decisions are guided by both evidence and Indigenous knowledge. At a time when global interest in the Arctic is intensifying, Canada remains steadfast to this type of cooperation, not confrontation. We must guide our shared stewardship of this region with the Arctic states and with indigenous people. In my language, we say Minopemati, which means the good life. It recognizes the interconnection of all people and the need for balance and respect. And so this is the same spirit of interdependence and reciprocity that guides how Canada approaches its Arctic responsibilities. In a shifting world of geopolitics, the Arctic reminds us that collaboration is our most renewable resource. We are working with our circumpolar partners to ensure the Arctic remains a zone of stability, science, and sustainable development. Through Canada's One Canadian Economy approach, we are aligning northern development with national prosperity, investing in clean energy, infrastructure, and innovation that create opportunities for Northerners first. Indigenous leadership is not peripheral to this vision, it is its foundation. Canada's sovereignty in the North is strongest when exercised in partnership with Indigenous people. In closing, I want to say that in northern Manitoba, where I come from, I've seen firsthand the strength of community. It is measured not by its resource, but by the relationships that we have to one another, by how people lift each other up. That same spirit of interdependence must guide our Arctic cooperation. So as we look ahead to growing northern economies and to deepening our collaboration across borders, let us continue an Arctic defined that is not challenged, but by focusing on its possibilities, that is grounded by right relations, reconciliation, and our shared humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, and if I can invite you to join me here.
Yes, of course.
I am sure you are aware, please, that for us in Iceland, being from Winnipeg is almost tantamount to being Icelandic. It is as you know, in front of the Parliament building in Winnipeg is the statue of the leader of our independence, Jón Sigurðsson. There's one in front of the Parliament building here in the main square. The only other statue is in front of the parliamentary building. And it was, that part of Manitoba was called for a number of years in the 19th century, the New Iceland. And published newspapers and maintained the languages and the culture. And there were even a big impact of the debates that took place in Winnipeg, how people followed them here and took positions. So I hope you feel at home, basically, yes.
Yes, I do. When we think about, this is my first time to Iceland, but there's definitely I feel that relational connection to Iceland. I was sharing with our Canadian delegates yesterday. My mother grew up in a town that was called Vogar.
Yes, yes.
And Vogar is an Icelandic word for bay or inlet. Yeah. And I believe we have the second largest population per capita in Manitoba of Icelanders in Gimli. It was formed as New Iceland in, I believe, 1874.
And as you know, there is this great festival in Gimli every August.
Have you been?
Yes, indeed, because it's almost a duty for any president of Iceland to turn up those festivals, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not turning this into a kind of Winnipeg Icelandic gossiping kind of session. So we have a new government in Canada, as we all know. Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for being here. And I will open the floor for questions. But if you were asked to emphasize very briefly, to what extent is the emphasis and the vision of the new government of Canada different from what we have seen before? Then I'm not just talking about the Trudeau government, I'm also talking about the previous government and so on. Is there a new sense in the government of Canada that somehow the Arctic part of Canada has reached a new kind of global significance, which perhaps it didn't have before? And because When we started the Arctic Circle Assembly, we had the sense that the then government of Canada looked at the Arctic part of Canada almost as an internal Canadian issue, not necessarily a part of our global engagement.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That is the question? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Grimson, for that question. Well, when we look at the circumstances today, it's much different than prior governments. Geopolitics are shifting worldwide, and we're all being impacted by that. So when we think about our northern Arctic parts of Canada, we definitely want to ensure that we're securing our sovereignty in the north, addressing our vulnerabilities as are other Arctic nations. And our approach is to ensure that, with our renewed vision and with this new government, that we're making the commitments that are necessary. So, for example, we've committed over $100 billion towards building up infrastructure in the North and Arctic, as well as some of those funds are going to go to building up our Canadian Armed Forces.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's have the lights up in the hall, and please, yes, we have a hand up there.
Hi there, Rob Hubert again from Calgary. But I'd point out that I'm a born and raised Winnipegger, so I'll just join in the conversation here. Go Jets, go. Yeah. A pushback, first of all, to you, President. When you say Canada's not involved, of course, remember the creation of the AEPS, Arctic Pollution Prevention grouping that predates the Arctic Council, was a joint Finnish-Canadian creation, and the Arctic Council was very much a Canadian creation in that. So I would push back just on the assumption that we only see it internally. My question for you, Minister, is, of course, I'd like to hear further elaboration. Last week, the Globe and Mail broke the story that Canada and the United States have been in detailed negotiations for Canada's participation in the Golden Dome. We're calling it, of course, the Canadian Shield. It's multiple billions of dollars. It's going to be completely changing our defense posture on the basis of what is being reported, but you haven't talked anything about that. Can you perhaps elaborate how much that is going to be shifting Canadian Arctic policy? Because the monies that they are talking about are huge. And so where does that take us going forward beyond? You talk multilateral, but that's bilateral. And that's going to be, if the reports are correct, that is going to be our major focus going forward.
Okay, well, thank you for that question, and thank you as a fellow Manitoban, Winnipegger. Nice to see you here. So in terms of our work with the United States, we recognize that the United States is also an Arctic country, and we will continue to share in our responsibilities in terms of looking at the sovereignty of our nations within the Arctic. So we continue to work on shared priorities. Those priorities right now for Canada are on building up its infrastructure, looking north, and ensuring that we're doing that in collaboration with people from the north. So the Arctic Dome is not part of a conversation that I've had recently, where I believe we're focusing more on our infrastructure and building up our Canadian Armed Forces. Thanks.
Okay, so do we have, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Mark Lantain, University of Tromsø, but originally from Montreal. Thank you for your presentation. I just wondered if you could elaborate a bit further. So there's been a lot of discussion about the one Canadian economy and its necessity. But there have been some questions about how the territories, how the Canadian North will be involved in that process. So I was wondering what you see as a priority as the one Canadian economy moves north. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So when we think about the one Canadian economy, we're looking at removing duplicate barriers across the country. So if we look at it from a regulatory lens, sometimes there's duplications between federal and provincial. So what that means is we work with the provinces and the territories when we're looking at moving forward projects of national interest, or when we're looking at interprovincial, interterritorial trade as well. well. So when we look at that from a northern Arctic perspective, one Canadian economy, when we put that in the context of projects of national interest, we want to ensure that there's a one window, one project approach so that we're able to fast track our projects. Sometimes projects could get hung up in regulatory reviews and environmental assessments, which we know are very important processes. But in the north, there's been a significant amount of work that's already been done through our major projects office, which is part of CanNor, which is part of my ministry, so the Canadian Economic Development Agency. So I think that approach is going to work really well as we have already established our major projects office. That major projects office is going to oversee all of the projects of national interest. So I think the work in the north that we've done is going to the major projects office will feed into that national office that is overseeing the large projects that are being built in the north. So I think there's going to be huge benefit, and I do believe we'll be able to move projects quicker than we've seen in previous years because we're building on that experience and that history.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hello, it's nice to see you here, Minister, over here. There you are. Hi. Also from Manitoba. I was just in Winnipeg this past weekend. So,
Nice.
I wanted to actually just provide you with the Arctic foreign policy document that was presented last year by Minister Joly. We were very, very proud because there was a research collaboration among Canadian federal groups, National Research Council, as well as Polar Canada, Parks Canada, the Fonds de Recherche de Québec, especially with UKRI, and also within that as a major partner, equal partner, was the ITK, the Inuit. So we were very proud that this collaboration was mentioned a couple of times in the foreign policy document, referring to us as a good example of how research could be used to benefit the foreign policy activities in Arctic Canada. So that said, there's a lot of researchers here, a lot of academic researchers here. We have a lot of ideas. We've been talking about climate change for 60 years, and it's funny to hear people saying, oh, now we have to do something. So I'm just wondering, given your importance to the Arctic and moving from moving from infrastructure over to the research community, it's very fragmented throughout the world and Canada in terms of who's doing what in Arctic research. Do you have a vision at all? Could you share your vision of how academic researchers could help further our efforts towards Arctic security, Arctic economic development, anything like that? Do you have a vision? I know that's kind of Industry Canada, but you're right in there too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. We are taking a whole of government approach to the work that we're doing right now in our country. And when I think about the Arctic foreign policy and the research that needs to be done to support it, Polar Knowledge and CHARS, which is the Canadian High Arctic Research Centre, those are both under my mandate as well, and we've been having great conversations with the team there, acting president, as well as the rest of their team. We went up and actually visited in Cambridge Bay. And so definitely I think it plays a huge and vital role to the work that we're doing, because we want to ensure, again, that we're using our resources well, and we know that other departments are also conducting research, as well as other countries are very interested in the Arctic. So I think it's an important opportunity to align a lot of that research, at least domestically, with the mandate of our Prime Minister. So as you know, very interested in supporting our Arctic, securing that, looking at how we expand trade, import, export through the infrastructure that we're building. You know, we're building ports, we're building infrastructure, roads, rail lines. But I also think we need to have a look at the challenges that exist in the north as well. So when we look at food sovereignty, for example, wherever you build a port, a city is going to emerge there. And so we're thinking ahead in terms of how can we use our research hubs such as Polar Knowledge and CHARS to align with that mandate. And so we've been having some great discussions around, how do we address food sovereignty? How do we look to build, homes and larger infrastructure in places where permafrost will impact? So we're pulling our research together, we're looking for greater alignment, and we're bringing cohesion between departments to ensure that the research that is happening between departments, again, that we're not necessarily duplicating, but that we're using, our funding dollars wisely, and we're all moving in the same direction. And the same is true in terms of working with our Arctic partners. We want to ensure that we're building on good research, whether it's around building up our Canadian Armed Forces, or defending our north. So there's lots of great conversations that are happening now that research could definitely support.
Unfortunately, Meet, I can't take any more questions because the time is up. So thank you very much, Minister, for being here. We hope to see you again at the future assemblies. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.